Welcome to today's episode of Salesforce Unraveled, and today we're going to dive a little bit into terminology. Some phrases I will go through, some keywords that I'll go through, and also a little bit, where can you go with help on any terminology that gets thrown at you. So of course, Salesforce is its own system, and it comes with its own range of language and jargon. And it can be quite difficult to actually understand what are they talking about. It's not just about sort of its core functionality. What do we mean by accounts? What do we mean by leads? What is a marketing campaign? That is sort of the standard terminology that's even for that, different opinions, what things mean. But there's also this whole range of constantly evolving buzzwords that they go on about. And today I'll just talk about some of those, explain a little bit what they are, without going too deep into them. But the main thing for today is actually, where can you go to find information? Where can you go to actually unpack this kind of stuff? Now let's go through a couple of examples first. So some that you might have heard about, for example, is flows. Flows are really big at this moment in time, and it all has to do with automation. Salesforce always has had automation processes in its system, and they be accessed by admin and developers to build, and so a user, they don't necessarily know they're there. For example, it can be, I close an opportunity, I close a deal. Maybe your business is a subscription model, and so you want this in a year time to be renewed. Now, you could rely on your user to remember this as a year time. You could ask your user to say the moment you close a deal, you immediately have to create a new deal for next year. But, sales users are busy and everybody is busy, so people will forget that. So as administrators and developers, we have access to tools that we can automate that. There used to be two different tools, Workflow and Process Builder, that did that. But over the last year or so, they have new tool been coming in and becoming bigger and more useful, and that is what we call flows. In itself, again, it's an automation tool, but it can do a lot of things, and it's really powerful to help the users, also them, to go through stuff. So we can do things like guided screens. For example, if you have a call center, you want your agents to go through certain questions on a call. We can build a flow of that as an admin and developer to help a user guide them through the questions. Or we do the stuff like I talked about earlier, about, for example, automatically creating an opportunity. We can also do that through flow. What this means, there's just a whole range of new learning for people to happen. They have to learn how flows work, what you can do with them. A lot of people still know how Workflow and Process Builder work, so they basically have to upskill themselves. One of the other things you might have heard about is CPQ, which is basically related to quoting, to pricing software. And that will really help you in making sure that when you go to things like opportunities, you can do accurate pricing in there. There's a whole range of suites of modules and badges on that on Trailhead, like I talked about one of my other modules on here. So have a look there and really dive into that, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. Now, one of the things you hear a lot about, just basic synonymous with Salesforce, is clouds. Salesforce is cloud-based, which means you don't have to download software. You just have to have an internet access and a computer. You log in and you are into the system. But it's just not one system they have. They have what we call clouds. And that means for every sort of business area, there is a different solution. So for example, just to go through a couple of them, we have Sales Cloud, really focused on sales users to help them, core CRM functionality, have your account with your contacts and put in your deals, your opportunities. And of course, a lot of stuff around it, but that's basically the crux of it. We have what we call Service Cloud, which is for your call center mainly. People might call you with problems, with questions, maybe with defects, billing questions, all that kind of stuff. Of course, works slightly different than things like we call opportunities. So for that, Salesforce has built a different solution, which is called Service Cloud. Same, we have Marketing Cloud. As the name says it, it's for the marketing team. So in there, you could do things like your email notification, automatically email sending. We also know these examples. Say you have booked a hotel. 2 weeks before you go to the hotel, they say, hey, you're booking. Do you need a car? Or do you know about local things that are to do? And maybe a week before, they say, well, you can actually already do advanced booking in services. And then maybe a week after you've been, it comes like, hey, do you mind doing a questionnaire? And maybe a couple of weeks later, it says, well, you've been with us last month. When's your next holiday? Do you mind coming back again? Those kind of emails, that chain, you can build within Marketing Cloud. Now, those are some of the core ones. There is a gazillion others that Salesforce has for different industries, for different business areas. And what it means is, yes, it still uses that core functionality. It uses the same kind of structure and system that Salesforce is, but there will be differences because you talk about different users. So there's already more bespoke functionality in there. Just a really useful one to know about. And so where do you actually go for all this jargon? These are just a couple of terms, but there is so much out there. And Salesforce is constantly changing. I sometimes wish they would just pause for maybe a year or two and stop doing so much so we can actually take a breath and catch up on stuff. But pretty much, every year and a bit, there's most likely, they acquire a new business, which means new integration, new company comes in, we need to learn new jargon, or they identify new needs for businesses, and so something else becomes a buzzword. Now, how can we deal with that? Both as a business using Salesforce, but also anybody who is a Salesforce professional. Now, there's basically two areas where you can go. Main one is Trailhead. So go to trailhead.com. The advantage of that one is if you look for your keywords, say for example CPQ, it will come with a whole range of badges and module. And so you get sort of bite-sized materials given to you. It's often a little bit more detail and explaining. They give quite a lot of business examples, and you can also test your knowledge. And it also guides you into the system how to do stuff. So if you're really somebody who likes that hands-on approach and more explanatory details, Trailhead is fantastic. Just be aware, like I said in my other video, there is so many badges out there. You might need a little digging time to find the correct one. The other area is help.salesforce.com. That is basically the online guidebook. It is potentially quite technical, especially if you're a business user, because it really goes basically to your handbook, your manual information about, okay, what do we actually mean from a technical perspective, what Salesforce does. It goes a little bit less into giving case studies. It's not that much going into and saying, okay, here in the system, you can do your setup and you can play around with it. But it is a useful area, and I myself use it a lot, even just to refresh my memory if I need to know stuff. So it's not just about new jargon coming in, but also about old stuff. I think like, oh, how did I again do something? Or how can I explain something? I need some details. So really two very good areas. Basically make them quick links, put them on your computer as bookmarks. It's really two areas where I would go to find any explanation on jargon. Of course, outside of that, you have all kinds of other things that you can do. So sometimes if I really get stuck, I throw things on Twitter and shout out to my wide network of people and say, can somebody help me? Of course, you have the whole community. Hopefully you have people you know who may be more Salesforce experts or maybe have different knowledge that you can tap into. That's all around it, but these are really two online areas where you can spend any time you want and finding information. So I hope you found this section useful. Thank you for listening to this latest Salesforce Unraveled. As usual, do your social media stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Any tips, any ideas you have anywhere else where maybe you go for jargon? Do you have any keywords that you think like, I'm hearing a lot about this, can you help me explain this? Please drop them in. Also, if there's any other topics that you want me to cover, please drop them in the comments. What is important is, we're all working from home. to make sure you find some time to switch off from work. You know, if you don't necessarily have a dedicated workspace, like this lady in the photo here has a child hanging around her neck and working at the same time, you know, it's important to switch off. So make sure you do your time, close the laptop, step away, and just spend some time with yourself. And you might hear in the background my cat screaming. So it's for me time to start helping my cat out, and he probably wants some cuddles and some feeding. So looking forward to see you next time.